Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of What's the Story? I'm Michael,
I'm Mark.
and I'm starting this week. What's going on, Mark?
Not much, We've been kind of MIA for a little bit.
Yeah, that's totally on me.
Yeah, about a month. I mean, I went out of town. Michael had finals. It was a lot of stuff going on this month. But we're back. Guess who's back? Back again. What's the story? He's back. Tell a friend. No?
I mean,
Alright, fuck
sure.
you then.
What do you want me to rap with you? Want to have a little back and forth?
I don't know.
Guess who's back?
I honestly don't know what I expected.
No, that's
To
your
be
line.
honest, I expected you to match my energy, I guess, but it didn't. It didn't happen. So hey,
What's up?
what are we covering this week?
Well, this week we're covering a topic that you seem fairly interested in, which is MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. A lot of people have been asking me like what we're doing for the next topic, and every time I tell them MK Ultra, they're like, "What's that?" I think a lot of people don't know.
Like, did you tell them
This is.
Did you tell them what it is, or just like listen to the podcast?
I mean, I just told them like, "Oh, it's this." I gave them like the bare minimum.
Okay.
Of what it was.
Well, I mean, without further ado, let's get into it. What is MK Ultra?
Project MK Ultra.
What is Project MK Ultra?
MK Ultra, aka the CIA's mind control program, is the code name given to an illegal program of experiments on human test subjects that was organized, designed, and undertaken by the United States Central Intelligence Agency.
The CIA.
Yeah. With the intent, if you can't use context clues, to master a control of someone's mind.
Well, not just... It wasn't to be master over the mind, because, that was kind of the sci-fi, image they put themselves to distract from their actual intent, which was to experiment with mind control, mind wiping, or memory wiping, behavioral modification techniques, and, ways of resisting torture and brainwashing by the enemy.
Sure. Just ways of manipulating your mind to work certain ways.
With unsuspecting, unwilling test subjects.
Yeah. It was pretty fucked up, man. Just the stuff that I was... And I don't know about you, I just kind of scratched the surface of it. There's so much.
I'll say this. This goes really, really deep. There are
really deep.
There are released files. There's, pages upon pages of conspiracy theories, and that's still going on today, but these are things we will get into, as we actually go through it.
Yeah.
So, just a little background as to, what spawned all this. After World War II, the U.S. implemented an Operation Paperclip, which was a covert mission to acquire Nazi scientists who experimented in, horrifying detail with mind control under the Nazi regime. And they, began to experiment with that kind of stuff on U.S. soil so that the U.S. would, get the upper hand on, what was the other, powerhouse of the world, Russia.
Mm-hmm. During the Cold War, this was when all this was going on.
No, yeah.
If you guys don't know what the Cold War is, then the U.S. school system has failed you. But, no, the Cold War was basically this arms race between mainly the U.S. and Russia. And they were basically just like in a technological nuclear armada race, just who has the bigger gun.
Spies everywhere.
Essentially, yeah. And this was kind of going on during that time. So this was another arm of that Cold War era.
This was just another way of the U.S. trying to get the upper hand on the nations around it.
Yeah.
So, the first date I really have of significance is 1953. Do you have anything that predates that?
No, I was going to say that it began in the 1950s. So.
No, yeah. So, in 1953, they began, MK Ultra, which...
Project MK Ultra.
Okay, so they started doing Project MK Ultra, and the way that it started is that they used prisons, hospitals, and universities as its fronts, and gave unsuspecting people mind-altering drugs, like LSD.
Before we get into that,
okay,
actually, because I have stuff on that also.
Okay, go for it.
But these experiments that they were conducting in these places, they were intended to mainly identify and develop drugs and or procedures that could and potentially would be used in interrogations and torture, basically weakening the individual and forcing confessions and, things of that nature.
Essentially trying to come up with a truth serum that would be used in tandem with torture and interrogation.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, none of that is possible. Mind control.
Well,
Okay, but I mean, what they were accomplishing was, or what they were trying to accomplish was found. I don't even know what word I'm looking for.
it was debunked.
Yeah, they couldn't figure out anything solid.
Well, that's what they want you to believe.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
like, I'm not going to say that everything they did was completely legit, but there's some pretty, extensive research and pretty horrifying cases of, hypnosis and being mind altered and being manipulated. I mean, cults, for one, adopt a lot of, stuff like this to get people on their side. And it's not all originating from this, but there's definitely a science to doing all that kind of stuff.
okay, maybe I misspoke in saying that, like, none of it bore fruit, but a lot of the stuff that they didn't accomplish a lot and just fucked up a lot of people.
Well, it fucked up a lot of people. How much it worked is, speculative.
Yeah. I mean, because we don't even know the whole story.
No, yeah, like, even this stuff we know, that's just what the CIA wants us to know as far as some people are concerned.
The CIA doesn't even want us to know this, to be honest.
Well,
But,
no, it's like, well, we'll get into that.
yeah. Where was I feel like?
I mean, I was just saying, they used universities and whatnot as fronts for their operations.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, they research and their research, and their experiments were undertaken at over 80 institutions, including 44 colleges and universities, as well as hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. And like you said, they use front organizations, which, like, that trips me out, because, like, the places that were housing these experiments, nobody even knew that, like, what was going on. At least the places that they came to.
No, right.
Even, like, they said that only, like, top officials even kind of knew that the CIA was involved.
Yeah, but it was so, like, someone at the top had a vague idea that the government was doing some stuff there, but it's not. They were very close to the vest with this kind of information and what they were doing.
Yeah, and it really, really sucks because they said that a lot of these experiments were performed on people such as, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my place.
No worries.
Here. Okay, they were administered to a lot of people like mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and prostitutes for some reason. And as one CIA official put it, they basically tried to look for people who couldn't fight back. Like, they looked for people who wouldn't be able to go to anybody with this information, or wouldn't be like a credible
And
source of. Because, if a drug addict comes and said, the fucking government experimented on me, like, 90% of people are going to be like, yeah, sure, crazy, and just, like, disregard whatever they say.
no, and even the people who did have some, some sort of, reputation to themselves where they would have some credit, it came to a point sometimes in experiments where they would, try and just pump them so full of drugs or, do so many experiments to them where basically they would break them so that they would seem broken and unstable, so if they ever went to somebody, they would look like they're just babbling, just completely discredit them. So
Right.
This was a very systematic, way of just covering their tracks, just leaving a whole bunch of, crazy people and, dead bodies in their wake.
Right. I mean, the CIA, they engaged in a lot of illegal activities for all of this to happen. But it all, like, the main thing is was the use of the unwilling and unwitting U.S. and even Canadian citizens as test subjects. And I thought that was pretty fucked up. Like, if it wasn't, like, already fucked up that they were using U.S. citizens unwittingly, like, why did they drag Canadians into it?
I don't think they dragged them into it. I think it just was happenstance. Like, they used whoever they could, possibly get their hands on.
So they just Canadians were just easy access to them.
I mean, some of them. I don't know how they got their hands on Canadians.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just have a couple examples of certain experiments that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So, one experiment was classified under Midnight Climax, and was set up at a whorehouse where men would go there and they would be secretly drugged.
That was in San Francisco, no?
I don't know.
I read that it was in San Francisco.
I guess it was San Francisco. But, I mean, they drugged them and just to watch them through a two-way mirror and see how drugged horny men would, act for, hours on end. One person was given a dose of LSD, once per day for half a year. And Dr. Ewan Cameron...
Was that at the brothel?
Oh, no, that was two different things.
Yeah, because I read the thing about the guy who had LSD for 174 days.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where it was or whatever, so I thought you were saying that it was in that brothel.
I mean, it might have been. I don't think it was that same brothel, but it could be, in the same area. But there was this person, Dr. Ewan Cameron, who was also involved in MK Ultra experiments. And Ewan Cameron was once the president for, not the U.S., the World Psychiatric Association. And what he did is he would put patients with depression and anxiety into drug-induced comas and tried to experiment with brainwashing them with taped recorded messages while they were in a coma.
So it was just like those sleep tapes that you hear about?
I mean, replace sleep with drug-induced coma, but yes.
Yeah, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, I'm saying it was one of those tapes.
No, yeah, I mean, we've said it before, but just highlighting again, like, none of these were willing participants. These are people who, trusted this doctor and went there for help, and they were, deemed a worthy candidate to be experimented on. So these fucked up things would, happen to them.
Yeah. I mean, they used a lot of different stuff to try to mess with these people. It wasn't just drugs. Though LSD was a really big thing that they used.
Yeah.
Like, they used it a lot.
But
they use a lot of different drugs and chemicals. They, like you said, they use hypnosis. They use sensory deprivation as a tactic. They use isolation for, long periods of times.
Yeah. Just to see how the mind would react under strain and all this stuff and how it would bounce back and what
they even used different forms of sexual abuse, which I thought was I don't know. I was kind of shocked that a government arm would actually sexually abuse these people just for the sake of this experiment.
I mean, it's fucked up, but I mean, they're given order from above. Do whatever the hell you can. Do whatever the hell you need to, give us a leg up on the people around us, and they did it by any means necessary.
Yeah. It's pretty fucked up. But like we said, LSD was, I don't want to say primary, but it was a very big...
It's the biggest and most frequent drug and, thing experimented on people that I found in my research.
Yeah. I looked up the effects that LSD has on the body.
Yeah.
Just because it was such a huge component of Project MK Ultra.
Yeah.
Well, the physical effects, which, are pretty grueling, I imagine, to go through. I've never been on LSD, but I imagine they're not pleasant. Dilated pupils, which that's kind of a given.
That's the least of their worries.
Oh no, my pupils are dilated. Higher or lower body temperature, so it just fluctuates your body temperature a lot. You get the sweating or chills because of that. Major loss of appetite, sleeplessness, you can't sleep. You get a dry mouth, you get tremors, basically night terrors. Just, it doesn't sound fun. And those are just the physical effects. It's not even the mental effects yet.
I mean, those are just the physical effects, but those are just the physical effects of people who were recorded who took LSD willingly.
Yeah.
There's this whole, study.
And even then, I'm sure these willing participants didn't take LSD every day for half a year.
No, right, but, I mean, to some of these unsuspecting people, it was recorded that a lot of them literally thought they were going insane and, just had all these thoughts, and a lot of them, or at least some of them, committed suicide. And I mean, even if they didn't commit suicide, and even if they, the mental effects aside, they had a physical reaction, like you were saying. But just to give an example of what a person didn't want or expect to take LSD, what they would go through, there was an interview with a man who was captured during, I forget what war it was. I want to say the Vietnam War, and was basically being force fed LSD in a way of trying to interrogating him, and he this soldier, this prisoner of war, basically was breaking down and remembering how just painful it was and just how he didn't want to. And that was someone who, was aware that he was taking it, but, just unwilling. And it's for these people who were unknowingly being exposed to LSD. I can only imagine, how much more they would have felt these effects and just how out of nowhere it would seem that they would come.
Yeah. I mean, it's just all kinds of fucked up. But like you said, with them not knowing, because usually they would dose these people without knowledge of them being dosed, right?
No, yeah, the CIA, or it's on record that CIA hired magicians to teach agents how to slip LSD into the target's drinks.
Yeah.
Like, they had all sorts of roundabout ways to get their people drugged.
Yeah. So, but I was going to say that doing that without consent or even without their knowledge is a violation of the Nuremberg Code, signed by the United States and just a bunch of other countries after World War II. So they weren't just breaking U.S. laws; they were breaking global scale laws.
No, yeah.
In what they were doing.
I mean,
the thing, you said, slipping them into drinks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't just do this to civilians and shit. They administered it to CIA and military personnel, to doctors, to other government agents.
Yeah.
And like you said, members of the general public. Which, I'm thinking, let's say I'm in the CIA,
mm-hmm.
right? And I start tripping out,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you just immediately be like, fucking Greg? Or whatever the fuck, whoever your commanding officer is?
No, I disagree with that completely. I think you have such a trust with these people because of the work that you do. You understand that there's secrecy, but I imagine there has to be a high level of trust to be working in that field.
But I'm not even saying that they're distrusting of each other. But immediately once you start tripping, wouldn't you know what was happening? And I'm not saying it would make the trip better or anything, but wouldn't afterwards, wouldn't you be like, hey, what the hell, man?
I think you're watching too much American Dad to think that the CIA is just a fun house of people playing pranks on each other.
It wasn't for pranks. These people were chosen by higher ups.
Well, yeah, but they were still secretly dosed,
But how much of a secret is it when I've been secretly dosed and I start tripping the fuck out? It's not a secret then that I am tripping out, that I was dosed.
We know all about this now, and there were whispers of that. But just because, let's say you're in the CIA and you have a terrible bad trip, the first thing you're going to do is run to your superior and say, hey, why did you drug me? Even, let's say hypothetically, even if what you're saying is true, what recourse do you have?
None. I'm not saying that they had recourse. I'm just saying that it's...
What are you trying to get across is...
I'm just surprised that they were drugging their own agents with this.
I mean, that's just on the list of the very, very terrible things that they did.
True. I read that, I forgot what state it was. I should have written it down. I want to say Kentucky, but I feel like that's not right. But in some state, there were 77 willing participants of all these experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, why? Either they volunteered and didn't know what they were volunteering for,
mm-hmm.
Entirely, or... Yeah, I don't know. That has to be the only one, because, who would volunteer for that in their right mind? Yeah. But no, I completely... I didn't even go over the mental effects.
No, I mean, go for it if you want.
LSD.
So, the mental effects is you become very delusional. You start to see very vivid hallucinations. You get an artificial sense of euphoria. A distortion of one's sense of time and identity. So, like, you don't even know who you are.
Right.
I guess at a certain point. Impaired depth perception, impaired time perception, distorted perception of the size and shape of objects, movements, color, sounds, touch, and the user's own body image. Severe, terrifying thoughts and feelings, fear of losing control, panic attacks, flashbacks, or a recurrence of the LSD trip, often without warning long after the LSD was taken, and severe depression and psychosis. So, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of acid flashbacks, where, like, you take acid or LSD or something, and, like, long after you're done tripping out, you will still go back and trip out, like, out of nowhere.
Just a resurgence of the stuff in your system, or?
Well, I don't know if it's a resurgence of the stuff, but I think, like, you go back there mentally.
Kind of like a PTSD, where...
Yes, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, that's fucked up. Like, I don't know, that's why I would never fuck with it, because, like, one, it doesn't sound like I would enjoy that high, at all. Second, like, what if I'm just at work one day, and then I start tripping out again? Like, who wants to deal with that?
I mean, some people.
Apparently. But yeah, I mean, those are the mental
Effects of LSD.
effects of LSD. And, like, the only good one was the sense of euphoria, and then there were, like, 13 other negative ones, from what I got.
Yeah.
But yeah. The intent of using the LSD and testing it on people was to bring out deep confessions from the person, or, like you said, wipe their mind clean, and essentially create a clean slate for the CIA or whoever
Which
to build upon.
which isn't a side effect of LSD, but they were trying to take advantage of their mind being altered and under all this stress and trauma to see how much strain they could put on a person's mind and see how they react to it, and, you know, play with doses to see what kind of permanent effect, what kind of controlled permanent effect, like wiping specific memories or specific, you know, X amount of hours, you know, of their memory to basically induce amnesia. Like, yeah.
Yeah, what?
I mean, yeah, that's what they did.
Yeah. I mean, and, like, I feel like we focused a lot on just, like, the LSD experiments.
I mean, that's a lot of what I found.
Yeah, that was primarily what I found. But, like we said, there's a bunch of other techniques that they used.
Yeah.
Or experiments that they conducted. But all of this came to light, kind of, in 1975, when the United States Church Committee brought it to Congress. And they said there's these experiments that that the CIA has been doing. They basically brought Project MKUltra to the public's attention.
I actually got a different date on that. What I researched was that it came to light in 1973, or at least an order was given in 1973. After Watergate happened, you know, everything was in, you know, basically everything the American government did was in scrutiny. There was, you know, specifically Nixon and his party that did that. It just became, you know, well, what else is going on?
Yeah.
And the head of the CIA at the time ordered all of MK Ultra to, you know, be burned, all the files and everything. And due to a misfiling, 20,000 documents survived the purge, which is why we know about it today.
Yeah.
But some say that's just a cover story. And that story was released around that time to, you know, shift tension away and say, okay, you know, you caught us. MK Ultra was a thing. We're done with it now. We've stopped experiments. We've burned all the research. You know, just don't worry about it. It was, you know, naysayers say that it was a deflection to, you know, make people focus on other things like Nixon and the Watergate.
Right. I don't know, the way that I read it, and maybe I just
I mean, there.
mixed up.
It's a conspiracy theory. There's a lot of
Yeah, sure.
ways to interpret this.
Everything we're saying is wrong. No, but I read that in 1975, that's when MK Ultra was brought to the forefront of like the public's attention.
Yeah.
Because of the church committee. It wasn't like not the churches or anything,
But just the committee that would so happened to be named Church.
yeah, there was some guys, something.
Winston Churchill.
Richard. No, it wasn't him. I don't think, but it was just some guy with the last name Church, and his committee brought. His committee from the U.S. Congress brought MK Ultra to the public's attention. But like you said, investigation efforts were hindered because of the destruction of the files.
Or supposed destruction.
1973, yeah.
I mean, the misfiling of 20,000 super secret, super
Yeah, I was
fucked
gonna
up.
say that sounds like a lot to just misfile.
That's why people say that it's, seems very unlikely. I mean, a
For
former.
all we know, it's still going on today.
I mean, that's what people say. I mean, Victor Marchetti, a former CIA agent, wrote an expose and was taken to court to try and censor the book. And this marked the first time in U.S. history that the government took somebody to court to censor a book. And what he said, I don't know if it was in the book or just something that he said on record, but he said, the real reason for the official secrecy in most instances is not to keep the opposition from knowing what is going on. The enemy usually does know. The basic reason for the governmental secrecy is to keep you, the American public, from knowing. For you too are considered the opposition, the enemy.
Right.
So,
if one day I just start tripping out, I know why, maybe.
MK Ultra. Well, I mean, if you were done, I actually had one more thing that a supposed MK Ultra related experiment that happened after 1953 and all that. And it was
73.
Huh?
73.
In 73. 10 years after that, or roughly 10 years, the infamous game Polybius came, to a couple American arcades. Are you aware of Polybius?
No, I have no clue.
Polybius is, an infamous game. It's, one of the, few widely known, or it's a conspiracy theory amongst video gamers.
Okay.
And what it was that it was a game that had basically mazes and shooting aspects to it, that had lights and patterns that simulated the effects of LSD, basically having shapes that, would be flashing and changing and distort your, how you perceive time and space and all that stuff. Not such an effect of LSD, but, a very low dosage of that.
Sure.
And periodically, Men in Black would come and take information from the machine. And, the game became so popular that fights would break out over who would play it. And, as time went on, players later reported night terrors, insomnia, memory loss, and some even committed suicide. And one day, the men just picked up the machine, and it was gone. And there is no physical evidence that this game ever existed. But there are so many people who, recounted that it existed, that become, part of this big old conspiracy theory, and, became, example of maybe that MK Ultra is still going on in some capacity.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
I mean, yeah.
What was the game called?
Polybius.
Polybius. We should do an episode on that one.
I mean, I feel like we just did.
True. But, I mean, I'm out of information. But again, we just kind of scratched the surface of...
Oh yeah, this goes
MK
deep, and
Ultra
depending
was.
on how much you really want to get on the government watch list, by all means, keep digging on the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. It was crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
It really makes me...
Like, the government watching all our movements and, looking at who we call and, all that stuff, I kind of accept that to a certain degree, where, they're trying to keep us safe, but them doing stuff like this, I can't wrap my head around, nor can I really, imagine how I would be comfortable with the government if they ever came out and said, "Yeah, we're doing that, and we're going to keep doing it."
Yeah. I mean, they can't. They would lose a lot of people's faith if they did that.
Well,
But I mean, they did do this.
I mean,
and
how much faith do you need when you could mind control the mass public?
it would have been interesting to be around when that came to light.
Interesting is one word. Terrified would be another.
I mean, but that's the world we're living in now. I feel like that doesn't make it less terrifying, does it?
No.
But I'm just saying, it would have been interesting to see the fresh reactions from that,
I suppose.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's, in a very small way, that's MK Ultra for you.
Yeah.
So, we good?
Yeah, I'm good.
I think we're good. Tune in next time when we cover something maybe a little more lighthearted than this.
Yes.
We'll try to keep it a little lighter for the next one.
We'll see.
TBD. Have a good one, people.
Peace.
This has been What's the Story?